tapped the top of the camera, checking the angle one last time. "All right, everybody," I said, putting on my usual vlogger grin. Michael, live from the wilds of Oregon, just outside Portland. The vast, dense woods stretched out behind me, a wall of green. It was perfect. I'd spent weeks researching unique spots to hike, something off the beaten path, and this trail seemed like the jackpot. Forums had whispered about it, old threads mentioning an almost forgotten pioneer settlement deep within these trees. Most people just said it was overgrown, a dead end, but a few vague posts hinted at something more. That's what I lived for, the more. Today, we're diving into some supposedly forgotten history, I told the lens, taking a few steps back to show off the trail entrance. It was barely a path, just a break in the trees, almost swallowed by ferns and low-hanging branches. Rumor has it, this used to be a logging road back in the day, leading to some old settlement. Could be nothing, could be epic. You know me, always gotta check it out. I started walking, the camera held steady in my right hand, pointing forward. The early morning light filtered through the canopy, making dappled patterns on the dirt. It smelled like damp earth and pine needles, that fresh, clean forest smell I always liked. Birds were chirping, squirrels chattering. It was pretty normal, you know. Exactly what you'd expect from a walk in the woods. "First impressions?" I asked, turning the camera towards my face for a second. "Honestly, pretty chill so far. Might just be a nice stroll. Maybe we'll find some cool old foundations, a rusty shovel, who knows?" I chuckled, trying to keep the vibe light and engaging. That was the whole point, right? Keep the audience hooked with adventure, maybe a little mystery, but always with a laugh. I turned the camera back to the trail. It was definitely narrower than I thought it would be, even for a rarely used path. Twigs snagged at my pants, and I had to push aside some thorny bushes a few times. The sounds of distant city life, whatever faint echoes there might have been, were fading fast. Like, really fast. It was just the woods now, the crunch of my boots, the rustle of leaves, the occasional bird call. Okay, so the trail's getting a little, I almost said sketchy, but decided against it. Less maintained. Definitely not a popular tourist spot, which honestly is what we want, right? Less people, more chances of finding something cool. I tried to sound cheerful, but even I could feel the subtle shift. The air, I don't know, it just felt thicker somehow. After about another 15 minutes of walking, I noticed it. Standing off to the left, almost hidden by a cluster of tall ferns, was this thing. It looked like a totem pole, but not really. It was carved from dark, rough wood, almost black, and it stood maybe 8 feet tall. The carvings on it were intricate, really detailed, but they didn't look like any traditional Native American art I'd ever seen. It was different. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," I muttered, stopping dead in my tracks. I brought the camera up, zooming in slowly. "Check this out. This is not on any map. This is unexpected." I walked closer, circling the totem. It had faces carved into it, twisted, almost pained expressions, stacked one on top of the other. They weren't angry, not exactly, but they looked sad, or maybe just really, really old. The wood was weathered, covered in moss and lichen in spots, but the carvings were still sharp, like someone had put a lot of work into them. "This is crazy," I said, my voice dropping a little more serious now. Look at these carvings. They're definitely not local. I mean, I don't recognize this style at all. And it's been here a long time too. I leaned in closer, my reflection blurring on the camera screen. That's when I saw them faint, almost imperceptible symbols etched into the weathered surface between the carved faces. They were tiny, barely visible unless you were really looking for them. Just abstract shapes, lines, and dots, but they gave me the creeps. They looked like they meant something important, but I had no clue what. While I was filming it, a strange silence fell over the woods. It wasn't just the city sounds being gone anymore. It was like everything else suddenly quieted. The birds stopped chirping. The rustle of leaves seemed to disappear. It was just quiet. A really deep, unsettling quiet. The kind of quiet that feels too heavy for a forest. I looked around, pulling the camera back to a wider shot. The trees seemed taller now, the branches denser, almost blocking out the sun. The air grew noticeably colder, even though it was still pretty early in the day. It was like a chill had just settled in right around me. Okay, so it just got really quiet all of a sudden, I said, trying to force a casual tone. My eyes darted around, trying to spot something, anything, that would make a sound. Maybe it's just the density of the trees here, you know. Less wind gets through. And maybe my imagination's running wild. I chuckled, but it sounded a little fake, even to me. A subtle unease had started to creep in, and I didn't like it. This wasn't just a regular hike anymore. I backed away from the totem pole, giving it one last look. It just stood there, still and silent, like it had been waiting for me. I wanted to stay and examine it more, really dig into what those symbols meant, but part of me just wanted to keep moving. All right, mystery solved later, probably, I said, trying to shake off the weird feeling. Let's keep going. We've got a pioneer settlement to find, after all. I continued onward, pushing deeper into the woods. The path narrowed further, even more than before, almost as if it was intentionally obscured. Branches seemed to hang lower, forcing me to duck, and the ground was covered in more roots and rocks, making it harder to walk. It felt like the woods were trying to swallow the trail hole, trying to make it disappear. My goal was to reach the end of the trail, to find whatever was out there. And that commitment pushed me to keep going, even with the growing feeling of isolation. It had been a long time since I'd seen any sign of human activity besides that strange pole. No wrappers, no footprints, no broken branches from previous hikers. Nothing. I continued to talk to my camera, trying to maintain my usual enthusiastic persona, but I could hear it. A hint of apprehension had entered my voice when I described the quiet. It wasn't natural. Forests weren't this silent. There should have been bugs, more birds, something. It's just really, really quiet out here now, I murmured to the camera, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't even realize I was whispering until the words came out. Like dead quiet. Kind of unsettling, honestly. You know, I'm used to hearing asterisk something. Suddenly, a distinct snapping sound echoed nearby. It wasn't loud, not like a branch breaking under a heavy weight, but sharp, like a small twig under a boot. It came from somewhere to my right, behind a thick cluster of bushes. It sent a shiver down my spine, just a quick, cold rush. I quickly turned my camera towards the direction of the noise, swinging it around, ready to catch whatever had made the sound. I waited, holding still, straining my ears. Nothing. Only the unnatural silence. I saw nothing. Absolutely nothing moved behind the bushes. I pulled the camera back, my breathing a little faster than before. I kept walking, listening to the crunch of my boots on the damp earth. The silence stayed, thick and heavy, like a blanket thrown over the whole forest. It had been hours since I left that weird totem pole, hours since I last heard anything other than my own breathing and the rustle of my clothes. The path got dimmer and dimmer, really deep into the woods now. The trees were so tall in places that they joined overhead, making a dark ceiling, hardly letting any light through. I honestly lost track of time. It felt like I'd been walking forever, pushing through low branches, ducking under tangled vines. My legs were starting to ache, and my shoulders felt tight from holding the camera up. I just wanted to find whatever was at the end of this trail and get out. The air felt colder, sharper, like it was getting later in the day, even though I hadn't seen the sky clearly in so long. Suddenly, the trees thinned out a bit, opening into a small clearing. I almost walked right past it, but something caught my eye. I stopped dead, the camera still pointing forward. My jaw dropped a little. This wasn't what I expected. Not at all. Scattered through the clearing, hanging from the branches of the trees, were dolls. Dozens of them. Child-sized wooden dolls. They just hung there, swaying a little. There wasn't really any breeze, not that I could feel, but they still moved, a slow, creepy back and forth. I raised the camera slowly, zooming in. They had these crude, painted faces, just a few strokes for eyes and a mouth, but they were all empty, staring straight ahead. No pupils, just blank, dark spots. A lot of them were broken, too, missing an arm or a leg. Some had splintered bodies, like they'd been out here for a really long time, getting slowly picked apart by the weather or by animals. They didn't look old in a historical way, like an antique, but more like they were decaying, falling apart. It was unsettling to look at them. Okay, this is something else, I mumbled, my voice feeling really small in the open space. I walked a little deeper into the clearing, turning the camera to take it all in. Pine needles carpeted the ground, muffling my steps. The silence here was different from the path. It was like the dolls were absorbing all the sound, making the clearing feel completely dead. I tried to come up with an explanation, a logical one. Maybe it was some weird art project, some really out there installation piece, deep in the woods. But no, that didn't make any sense. Who would put something like this so far off any map? And why would they let them fall apart like this? These weren't sculptures from a gallery. They looked like forgotten, broken toys. This is not normal, I said to the camera, my voice barely above a whisper. I mean, look at these. They're just hanging, everywhere. I got closer to one, lowering the camera a bit to get a better shot of its face. It was one of the ones with a missing arm, just a jagged stump of wood where its shoulder should be. The eyes, those flat, blank eyes, seemed to follow me even though I knew they couldn't. It just felt that way. Who made these? Why are they here? I asked, though I wasn't really asking the camera. It was more like I was just talking to myself, trying to process what I was seeing. They're all different, but they're all the same size, little kids' dolls. The whole thing sent a shiver through me. The isolation, the creepy dolls, the unnatural quiet. It all added up to a really uncomfortable feeling. This was way past exploring forgotten history. This was something else entirely. Suddenly, I heard it. Sound so faint it was like it came from inside my own head. A low, soft whisper, like wind moving through dry leaves. But there was no wind. It seemed to pass through the trees, just at the very edge of my hearing. It made me yank around, spinning instantly, my camera swinging with me. I looked in every direction, my eyes scanning the dense line of trees surrounding the clearing. Nothing. Not a single branch moved. Not a rustle, not a shadow. There was nothing there. Only the dolls, still swaying just a little. I stood there for a long moment, completely still, holding my breath. I strained my ears, waiting for the whisper again, for anything. But it was just the profound, heavy silence. The kind that makes your own breathing sound too loud. Maybe I imagined it, I told myself. My mind playing tricks on me after hours of walking in this place. It had to be. I didn't see anything, I said, putting a hand up to my camera, almost like I was reassuring it or myself. Just thought I heard something. Probably nothing. I really wanted to believe that, but the feeling in my gut was telling me something else. This place felt watched, and those dolls didn't help. I backed away from the doll clearing slowly, still filming, giving them one last, long look. They just hung there, their empty eyes seeming to follow me as I moved. "All right, time to go," I whispered, and I started walking, picking up my pace. I didn't want to be in that clearing anymore. The urgency to push forward felt stronger now. A real need to escape this unsettling display. The weirdness was piling up. The path quickly narrowed again as I left the dolls behind, becoming even darker than before. It felt like the woods were closing in, the trees pressing in on either side. I pushed through thick brush, my pants snagging, branches brushing against my face. After what felt like another long stretch, the path opened up slightly. I saw it through a break in the trees, almost completely hidden by overgrown vines and thick bushes. It was a shack. Small, old, and really beat up, almost swallowed by the surrounding green. The wood was dark and weathered, practically rotten in places. "Whoa," I said, stopping a few yards away. The windows were boarded up with planks that looked like they'd crumble if you leaned on them. The door hung open precariously on a single hinge, swaying just a bit, like it was breathing. I walked towards it cautiously, my camera up, pointing at the shack. It felt like I was walking into something I shouldn't be. The whole place had this wrong feeling about it. "Looks like a shack," I mumbled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Probably just an old trapper's cabin or something." I got to the doorway and paused, looking inside. It was dark, dusty air hanging thick in the small room. I used the camera's light to look around. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dirt and leaves. In the middle of the room, almost perfectly centered, was a single object. It looked like an antique cradle. Old wood, chipped paint. It sat there, just by itself, in the middle of all that dust and decay. I could see a small, worn blanket tucked inside it, almost blending in with the shadowy interior. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just some abandoned old shack, and those weren't just random dolls hanging in the trees back there. Oh no, a really chilling realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone had lived here. Someone had left something behind, something truly disturbing. I took a step inside, the wood groaning under my boot. The air inside felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me, almost suffocating. It smelled stale and dusty, like old wood and decay, with something else, something I couldn't quite place, but it made my skin crawl. I pulled back from the shack doorway fast, my body just wanting to get away. That cradle, sitting there all alone in the dusty dark, it really got to me. It wasn't just old, it felt heavy, carrying something I didn't want to think about. That unsettling realization about the dolls, about someone living here, it stuck with me. This wasn't some cool folklore discovery anymore. This was a bad feeling, a really bad feeling, growing inside my gut. Okay, I mumbled, mostly to myself, keeping the camera pointed at the shack as I stepped away. All right, nope, that's enough adventure for one day. I decided right then that I was done. This whole thing, the weird totem pole, the creepy dolls, and now this shack with its implications. It was too much. I just needed to turn around, retrace my steps, and get back to my car. Back to normal. That sounded really good right about then. I turned, pointing the camera back the way I thought I came, ready to head out. But the path I'd used to get to the shack, the one I had just walked down, it wasn't there. Not clearly, anyway. The trees seemed to have moved, or maybe just grown in, closing up the narrow break in the brush that I remembered. It was just a wall of green, dense, and thick. I pushed forward anyway, figuring I just missed it. Maybe a branch had fallen, or some leaves had drifted over the trail. I kept walking, looking for any familiar landmark, any broken twig or distinct rock that would show me the way back. Nothing. The woods looked the same everywhere I looked. Tall, dark trees, tangled vines, a chaotic mess of green and brown. A knot started to form in my chest, tightening with every step. My breath hitched a little. I kept pushing, trying to stay calm, telling myself it was just a slight detour. But the more I looked, the more the trees all started to blend together. The path was gone. Okay, I said, my voice sounding a little shaky. I stopped, rotating the camera slowly, trying to capture the sheer sameness of everything around me. This is not great. I can't really see the trail anymore. It just disappeared. Panic started to bubble up, cold and sharp. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. Maybe the GPS had gotten through. Even a partial signal would help. I turned it on, the screen lighting up, but it was just blank where the map should be. No signal bars. Nothing, just a dead zone. My throat felt tight. No signal. I tried to make it sound casual, but my voice cracked a little. I held the phone up, angling it different ways, like that would magically conjure a signal. It didn't. Just a blank screen mocking me. The sunlight, which had been filtered and dappled before, now barely showed through the thick overhead branches. It was getting darker than it should be, like dusk was falling fast, even if it was earlier than that. The whole forest felt dim, shadowy. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding really small and thin against the overwhelming quiet of the woods. "Is anyone out here? Hello?" The sound just died, swallowed up by the endless trees. No echo, no reply. Just that heavy, dead silence, like the woods were holding their breath around me. It was like calling out into a void. I started walking again, faster this time, not really knowing where I was going, just trying to find anything that looked familiar, anything that would lead me out. My legs ached, but the growing fear pushed me on. After what felt like an eternity, I saw something. Hanging from a branch, right in front of me, was a doll. One of those creepy, child-sized wooden dolls. It just swayed there, its blank eyes staring. "No way," I muttered, stopping short. I distinctly remembered leaving the doll clearing behind. There shouldn't be any dolls here. I brought the camera up, zooming in on it. It was identical to the others, broken and weathered. I looked around, and then I saw another, and another. They weren't just in the clearing anymore. They seemed to be scattered throughout the trees, almost like they were lining the new path I was on, watching me. They just hung there, silent, swaying. It was like the forest was putting on a show, just for me. The thought made my stomach clench. I kept moving, trying to ignore them, trying to tell myself they were just leftovers, blown by some wind I couldn't feel. But they kept appearing, everywhere I looked, through breaks in the trees. Always just watching. The more I wandered, the more I felt this nagging feeling, like I was walking in circles. I kept seeing the same cluster of 3 tall pines forming a triangle, or an oddly shaped rock covered in moss. I'd walk for what felt like 10 minutes, pushing through thick brush, and then boom, there was that same weird tree configuration again. It was like a cruel joke. I think I'm going in circles," I said to the camera, my voice flat, drained. I dragged my hand through my hair, feeling the sweat on my forehead. "I keep seeing the same stuff. This is messed up." I decided to try a different direction. I forced myself to push through a particularly dense patch of brambles and thorny bushes, figuring if I just went in a straight line, eventually I'd hit something. A road, a creek, anything. My foot snagged on a thick, hidden root, and I went down hard. My knee hit the damp earth first, then my hand, scraping against a rock. The camera flew from my grasp, clattering loudly against the ground, the sound echoing in the oppressive quiet. "Ow," I gasped, my knee throbbing. I quickly reached for the camera, my heart pounding. It was still recording, thankfully. I picked it up, shaking off the dirt, and looked at the screen to make sure it was okay. That's when it happened. The screen flickered wildly, the image breaking up into static and distorted colors. Then, for just a split second, I saw something. A brief, blurry image flashed across the screen. It looked like a child running through the trees, just a fleeting glimpse of a small shape, really fast. Then it was gone. Just static again, then my own weary face looking back at me. I froze, staring at the screen. Did I really see that? Was that a glitch? My mind tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it away. Just a broken camera, just a trick of the light. "It's just a glitch," I mumbled, trying to reassure myself. But the fresh wave of fear that hit me was real. The image, brief as it was, had been too clear, too specific to be just random static. It really looked like a small figure, moving too fast to track. I got up slowly, my knee aching, my mind racing. I continued walking, my desperation growing with every step. The woods didn't feel like a natural place anymore. It felt alive, like it was watching me, playing with me. A conscious, malicious thing, trapping me inside its endless green walls. It was less a forest and more a cage. Suddenly, a faint sound reached me. A soft, childlike giggle. It was light, airy, almost like a whisper, but distinct enough that I couldn't trick myself into thinking it was wind. It came from somewhere nearby, just out of sight, behind a thick curtain of trees. My stomach dropped, a cold, sick feeling spreading through me. I stopped dead, my body tensing. My eyes darted towards the sound, but I saw nothing. Absolutely nothing. The quiet pressed in again, heavier than ever, making me feel exposed and small. My mind raced, clawing for a logical explanation. A bird, maybe. A small animal making a weird noise. But it sounded exactly like a child, like a small girl giggling. Right here, in the middle of nowhere, alone. That thought was even worse than just being lost. The lingering, childish giggle still echoed in my ears, cutting through the oppressive quiet of the woods. It had shaken me more than anything else so far, mainly because it felt specific, pointed. The idea that a real child, or something that sounded like one, was out here, possibly seeing me, changed everything. My mind kept trying to find a logical explanation, but deep down, I knew it wasn't a good sign. Days started to bleed into each other after that. I lost all sense of time, wandering deeper into the green maze. One moment felt like twilight. The next it was pitch black, then morning. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, a relentless cycle of towering trees and tangled undergrowth. I kept trying to find a way out, to make sense of the direction, but nothing worked. It was like the woods itself was playing a cruel game, constantly shifting, showing me the same landmarks over and over. My food supply was gone after what must have been 2 full days, maybe 3. The water in my bottle had run out even faster. My throat felt like sandpaper, and every swallow was a dry, rasping effort. I kept talking to the camera, my voice getting hoarser, rougher. It was less about making a good video now and more about keeping myself sane, about having some record, just in case. A desperate message from a really bad situation. Still here, I rasped, pointing the camera at a patch of particularly thick ferns that looked exactly like the ferns I'd walked past an hour ago. Just still walking. Haven't seen a way out. Haven't seen anything human. Just trees. Lots and lots of trees. The faint, whispering sounds kept up, always just on the edge of hearing. Sometimes it was like wind through dry leaves. Other times it sounded like a hushed conversation, but I could never make out words. It blended with the distant, unsettling laughter of a child. Not the giggling I'd heard before. This was different. This was lighter, fainter, sometimes almost like a small gasp of joy. It was always just out of reach, too. I tried to follow it, thinking it might lead me to a road, a cabin, another person even. But it would vanish as soon as I headed towards it, only to pop up somewhere else, like a cruel lure. "Hear that?" I'd whisper to the camera, freezing in place, my head cocked. "Sounds like kids playing, but there's nothing. I swear, this place is messing with my head." The shadows grew long and deep as dusk settled in again, casting the forest in a dull, muted light. I was walking, or rather, just stumbling, when I saw it through a break in the trees. A small, almost swallowed-up fence, half collapsed, leading to a patch of ground that somehow felt different. It wasn't just another section of woods. I pushed through some low branches and found myself in a small clearing. It was an old cemetery, really old. The headstones were crumbling, angled, leaning every which way, covered in thick green moss and overgrown with weeds. Most of the names and dates were just illegible smears on weathered stone. They looked like they had been here for centuries, slowly being reclaimed by the forest. I felt a strange quiet here, a different kind of quiet from the rest of the woods. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the dull clearing, but more like a deep, respectful stillness, as if the ground itself was holding its breath. I walked slowly between the markers, my feet crunching softly on dead leaves and dry earth. The camera stayed up, filming everything. This was definitely something I hadn't expected to find. Then I saw it. A small grave, set slightly apart from the others, looked almost untouched by the passage of time. It was child-sized, small and humble, but the inscription on its stone was surprisingly clear, as if someone had recently scraped away the moss. I lowered the camera, zooming in on the words etched into the stone, my hand feeling a little unsteady. "Ana Rodriguez," I read aloud, my voice a scratchy whisper. "Died 1898. A cold dread washed over me, like icy water running down my back. This wasn't just some random cemetery. This had to be connected. The dolls, the shack, the cradle, and now Ana Rodriguez. It clicked into place, a horrifying picture starting to form in my mind. Not just a lost settlement, but something specific, something tied to a child or children. Right next to the small headstone, lying on the ground, almost nestled against the base, was a small wooden toy horse. It was clearly old, worn smooth in places, but it looked almost cared for, like it had been placed there deliberately. I filmed it, the camera shaking a little in my hand. It was too much of a coincidence, too many pieces fitting together. I had this awful realization, like someone had just flipped a switch in my head. This wasn't just a place where kids might have lived or died. This was deliberate. A set of events from the past, somehow still alive, still active here. As I stared at the toy horse, a soft, childlike sobbing reached my ears. It was faint at first, then clearer, coming from somewhere behind a large oak tree nearby. The tree was ancient, with massive, gnarled roots that snaked over the ground like thick ropes. The sobbing sounded exactly like a small child crying, a mournful, quiet sound that felt entirely out of place in this isolated, forgotten cemetery. My stomach dropped, a cold, sick feeling spreading inside me. I slowly turned the camera towards the sound, then angled my whole body, my eyes fixed on the immense tree. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to just bolt in the opposite direction. but something pushed me forward instead, a grim curiosity, or maybe just a desperate need to face whatever was out there, to get some kind of answer. I moved slowly, one cautious step after another, my boots hardly making a sound on the soft earth. The sobbing continued, drawing me closer, pulling me towards the massive oak like an invisible string. It sounded so real, so heartbroken. I had to know. I had to see. My hand was sweating on the camera, but I kept it pointed, ready. As I peered around the thick, rough trunk of the tree, my heart hammered against my ribs. I saw it. There was no child, no little girl kneeling there crying. Instead, propped up against the base of the massive oak, was a small, dirty wooden doll. It was identical to the ones hanging in the trees back in the clearing, the same blank, empty eyes, the same crude craftsmanship. It just sat there, leaning against the bark, looking completely still. The sobbing stopped abruptly. The moment I saw the doll, the sound vanished. The absolute quiet that followed felt colder, heavier than before. It was like the crying had never happened, as if it was just another trick, another illusion in this unsettling place. I quickly backed away from the tree, stumbling a step or two, my mind reeling. The full weight of my situation hit me then, a crushing realization that knocked the wind out of me. This wasn't just a forest I was lost in, and it wasn't just a few random, creepy occurrences. I wasn't just lost. I was trapped by something or someone who had been here for a very long time. Something that knew I was here, that was watching me, and that was playing a very deliberate, very twisted game. This wasn't an accident. This was a cage. I was in it, and there was no obvious way out. I backed away from the tree, stumbling a step or two, my mind reeling. The full weight of my situation hit me then, a crushing realization that knocked the wind out of me. This wasn't just a forest I was lost in, and it wasn't just a few random, creepy occurrences. No, it was more than that. I was trapped by something or someone who had been here for a very long time. Something that knew I was here, that was watching me, and that was playing a very deliberate, very twisted game. This wasn't an accident. This was a cage. I was in it, and there was no obvious way out. The woods plunged into pitch black, no warning at all. 1 second, I could see the outlines of the trees, the faint path of where I'd been walking. The next, it was like someone threw a heavy, thick blanket over everything. The camera, my only real light source, felt heavy in my hand, its dim screen barely cutting through the overwhelming dark. I kept it pointed in front of me, trying to make out shapes, anything that wasn't just an indistinguishable black wall. My feet shuffled on the ground, kicking at unseen roots and rocks. I couldn't even tell if I was still on a path or just blindly pushing through dense brush. Then the sounds started again, louder now and closer. Not just the soft, lone giggle from before, but full-on childish laughter, light and airy, sometimes overlapping, like several kids were playing. It swirled around me, coming from everywhere at once, then fading, only to spring up somewhere else. Mixed in with the giggling was whispering, soft and indistinct, like secrets being shared. I strained my ears, trying to catch a word, a phrase, anything that would tell me who or what was making the noise. Nothing. Just the constant, maddening murmur that sounded like hushed conversation, always just out of reach. I held the camera up higher, its weak light making shadows dance around me. But they were just shadows, nothing concrete. My eyes darted back and forth, trying to track the sounds. They seemed to come from directly in front of me, then suddenly from behind, then from both sides at once. It was disorienting, making me feel like I was spinning, even though I stood still. My breath came in short, quick gasps, and then I saw them. Flickers, shapes, not full, solid figures, but fleeting bits of movement between the trees, too fast to really grasp. Always small, always low to the ground. They darted through the dim light of my camera, gone before I could even register them fully. Small, childlike shapes. That's all I could make out, like kids playing hide and seek in the dark. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic rhythm against the quiet. These weren't just sounds anymore. These were things, moving, watching. My legs finally decided to cooperate, and I pushed myself forward blindly. I had to get away, had to find an escape. I started running, or at least trying to run. My body protested with every step. My legs ached, my muscles screamed from days of constant wandering, and my stomach felt hollow. I stumbled more than I actually ran, weaving through the inky blackness, my elbows hitting branches, my shins scraping against unseen obstacles. The sounds followed, surrounding me, a constant, chilling chorus of giggles and whispers. The shadowy figures continued to dart at the edges of my vision, always just out of reach, always just blurry. It felt like they were hurting me, pushing me deeper, further into their domain. I kept telling myself it wasn't real. It was exhaustion, dehydration, plain old fear playing tricks on my mind. But the evidence was piling up. The dolls, the shack, Ana Rodriguez, and now this. I only lasted a few minutes of this desperate run before my body gave out. My legs buckled under me, and I went down hard, landing against something solid and rough. It was a tree, a huge one, its bark gnarled and thick against my back. I slid down its trunk, ending up in a crumpled heap on the damp ground, panting, sucking in shallow, ragged breaths. My chest burned, and my throat was raw. Every muscle screamed in protest. I closed my eyes for a second, just trying to regain some semblance of control. When I opened them again, the camera was still clutched in my hand, its dim screen a small rectangle of light in the overwhelming dark. I saw the battery icon in the corner, blinking red. It was almost dead. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded me. This was it. My only connection, my only record, was about to go silent. I turned the camera towards myself, angling it slightly so my dirt-streaked, gaunt face filled the small screen. My eyes looked wide and bloodshot, my hair matted with sweat and grime. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to speak, to get the words out before the battery finally gave up. Okay, if anyone finds this, I rasped, my voice barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. I paused, trying to find the words. The sounds of giggling and whispering seemed to intensify, like they knew what I was doing, like they were getting closer. pressing in. I swallowed hard. I've been lost for days now. I don't know how long. And this place, it's not normal. It's got things in it. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it shook with every word. I saw the dolls, the shack, that cradle. And then there was this cemetery. I forced myself to remember the name. Ana Rodriguez, died 1898. There was a toy horse at her grave, a small one. Something happened to her, I think. This whole thing, it's all connected to her somehow. A cold tremor went through me as I spoke. I peered into the darkness beyond the camera's dim light, half expecting to see something emerge from the shadows. There are these figures, small ones. They keep darting around, and the sounds, giggling, whispering. It feels like I'm being watched, like I'm being followed, like they're playing a game. My voice started to crack, raw and thick with terror. I'm not alone out here. I haven't been alone this whole time. This isn't just me being lost. This is deliberate. These strange forces, they're here, they're real, and I'm trapped. As I finished speaking, a low, drawn-out moan came from inside the tree, directly behind me. It was deep, guttural, a sound that felt more like a vibration in my ribs than something I heard with my ears. It resonated through the trunk I was leaning against, a living sound from within the wood itself. My head snapped back, hitting the bark, and I flinched, scrambling to pull myself away. A faint light, soft and pulsing, started to glow from a small crack in the bark, just above eye level on the tree's trunk. I could see it clearly in the absolute darkness, a tiny beacon. It wasn't bright, just a soft, steady throb of light coming from a small fissure, a natural opening in the rough bark that looked like it led to a hollow space inside. My eyes went wide, fixing on it. I slowly, cautiously, angled the camera towards the light, my hand shaking violently. It was just a small, hollow cavity in the tree, and inside, perched on a bed of dried leaves, was the toy horse from Anna's grave. The exact same one. It glowed with that soft, pulsing light, a steady rhythm that matched the terrifying moan that had just come from the tree. The light pulsed, almost like a tiny, gentle heartbeat within the dark, silent woods. My camera's screen flickered wildly, the red battery icon flashing faster, a desperate signal before it finally gave out. The image on the screen broke up, distorted beyond recognition, then went black. The last source of light, my connection to the outside world, was gone. Absolute darkness swallowed me whole. I was blind. The silence that followed was instant and heavy. No more giggles, no more whispers, just the ringing in my ears and my own ragged breathing. Then, unmistakably, I felt it. A soft, light touch on my shoulder. It was a child's hand, small and gentle. And then, a cold, stale breath, like air from a grave, on the back of my neck. The video resumed abruptly, the footage grainy and distorted. The timestamp on the screen indicated several weeks had passed since I disappeared. The scene was no longer the deep woods, but a clean, sterile room, with forensic investigators wearing hazmat suits, examining the camera. A male voice, presumably a detective, talked off camera about the discovery of the camera by a search and rescue team during a routine patrol miles from where I started my hike. He stated that no sign of me or any other remains were found in the vicinity. Footage then cut to a local news report showing a blurry still of me from my video. The reporter detailed my disappearance, mentioning the unusual nature of the video found on my camera, but dismissed the spooky stuff as hallucinations due to prolonged exposure and dehydration. The news report emphasized the dangers of unprepared solo hikes in remote areas. The final shot of the video showed a close-up of the toy horse found on my camera, now sitting on an evidence table in a police station. The faint, pulsing light from the horse was still visible, unnoticed by the police. The camera then panned slightly to reveal a small, child-sized wooden doll placed neatly beside the horse, its empty eyes seemingly staring directly into the lens. The recording ended there, my fate unknown, the mystery of the woods and its unsettling residents left unsolved, suggesting that I was likely taken by the children, and the toy horse was left as a calling card to continue the cycle of people getting lost in the forest. The toy horse and the child-sized doll were not there before. The police were not aware of these objects, leaving the viewers with the impression that only I knew what was going on.